but it's very, very simple, guys. It's 8 slides. And literally, you know, it talks about what we hear in the news every single day, right? And then it also talks about the patterns, right? I mean, everything is a cycle. There's nothing that's happening right now. There's nothing new under the sun. So everything is a cycle. So if you can show them that, you know, hey, what's been happening? What's been happening with mortgage rates during, you know, this time, during recessions? What's been happening with housing during the recession, right? What's been, you know, and why, right? If you can show this to them, and by the way, guys, this month, just October, we're gonna be closing 6 buyers this month.
In California, you guys, where you don't think people are buying.
So like, if you can, and this is, believe it or not, this is a presentation that I've been using to basically close all of my buyers. I sit them down on a buyer consultation and I address all of their concerns, right? We sit them down and you listen to what they're saying. Then I'm like, let me show you something. And this is literally, it takes me 10 minutes to go through this, right? At most. And then they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? So this is literally the presentation that I've been using to this month, closing 6 buyers. And I think our last buyer, our 6th buyer is going to be closing on the 31st of this month, but literally closing 6 buyers this month.
I love that you shared that, and I love this presentation because just the way it's put, it's very simple. The guy in the video also talked about population growth, and what Mary didn't show you in that presentation is the very last slide talks about population growth, which I'm sure Tony will talk about a little bit. That, yeah, now you're competing with all these other people, and the builders didn't build enough homes after the recession. So now you are competing with everybody else that's ready, and there's not enough homes. So we have 2 more minutes to for this presentation. Actually, 1 more. Does anyone, Chris or Mary, want to add to anything? And then I'm going to hand it over specifically to Tony and Mary for this next section.
Yeah, I really like that presentation you have, Mary. I have a very simple graph that just shows the market during the different recessions. The one thing that I do different is I keep a mortgage calculator, and I'm pretty good with a calculator that I can show the actual amount of money that they're going to save or spend, depending on the way that the interest rates jump up and down. And we can do it a little interactive. So, you know, if you wait till the interest rates go up, and I can show them, you know, live, you know, what it's going to do if they wait for the interest rate to go up. And I kind of explain it. So let them know that they're taking a chance one way or the other, because we can't guarantee what it's going to be in 6 months. We have our projections, but this way we can kind of lay it out for them.
Chris, is that a calculator that you can share with us?
I don't have it ready right now, but yeah, I can send it out to you.
I would love it if you could do that, because I want them to have all the tools. Okay, without further ado, we are going to welcome Tony Campuzano out of California. He works with a lot of our agents. Him and Mary are crushing it together, getting licensed in Texas pretty soon. Tony is great at talking about mortgages, money, the economy. There you go, Tony. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Good morning, all. Thank you for attending. Oh my gosh, there's so much to say. I'm just kidding. So today's topic is about the 2-1 buy down or temporary buy downs. So don't worry, I won't drone on. It's very simple. I promise you, this is really like 5th grade math. Seriously. It's like 5th grade math. It's not complicated. And here's something I should start with too. So the 2-1 buy down is not a program. It's not something overly complicated. All it is, guys, is a feature on a conventional loan, on an FHA loan, on a VA loan. It's really all it is. It's just a mathematical feature, and we'll go through. I have some slides to show you at the end. You're going to be experts. It's really very simple, as Tanya said initially. So when markets shift the way ours have, when interest rates meteorically explode upward, these products get dusted off the shelves and repackaged, and so, but they've been around a long time. So I believe I need to share my screen so I can show you. So do I have that ability now, Tanya? Okay. So can everyone see this? Yellow and black? My favorite colors. All right. So temporary buy down. And so let's talk about how this works. So for those of you who don't know me, there's a little bit about me. So here's some stats about me. I speak Spanish. No, my picture is not photoshopped. I think maybe for the crow's feet. Okay. Next. So I work with Excel. A little bit about Excel. Who are we? Excel is a mortgage banker, broker. You know, in our market where things are shifting and you need ability to different credit lines and different underwriting platforms, Excel really does a great job at being able to shift between working like as a bank or working as a direct broker. So that's really what we're about. This slide talks about something we all know. So the seller's housing market has shifted to a buyer's market. I think many of you have seen that. So seller concessions are making their 2022 debut. This shift has sellers reducing their list price and offering concessions. So on CNBC, I was researching, and so I found out that maybe some of you have heard this statistic, but so the average, the national median price went from 449 to 435, representing 3.11% reduction, the average price reduction, I guess. So it's important to remember that number. So it's a little over 3. We'll come back to that. But okay. So buy down options, by the way, the most famous one is the 2-1 buy down, but there is such a thing as a 1-year buy down, and there is such a thing as a 3-year buy down. So 3-2-1, 2-1, and 1-0. But we're going to focus on the 2-1, which is the most common and popular. Okay, so here's a breakdown. So basically, here's a way to think about it. What in the heck is this buy down? So first, it's an agreement that the buyer and seller make. So the seller agrees to deposit a specific amount of dollars for the benefit of the buyer. So the bank then is going to hold on to this money and use it to subsidize the buyer's mortgage payment for the first 2 years in this case. That's really all it is. So look at this breakdown. So in the first year, if a buyer and seller agree and the lender sets up a 2-1 buy down for the buyer, what's going to happen in year 1 is that for the first 12 payments, the bank is going to charge the buyer 2% less than what they're supposed to be paying. Now, something important to note. The loan is a 30-year fixed loan with a 30-year fixed rate. So how does that happen? I thought it's like contractual. They can't change the rate, right? The answer is yes, you're exactly right. So what happens is the lender arranges the payment as a reduction of 2%, but that 2% has to be made up somewhere. It has to come from someone. And the answer is it comes from that deposit that was contributed by the seller for the benefit of the buyer. So then it's just dispersed on a monthly basis. So then in year number 2, the bank says, okay, so now the second year is starting, we're going to adjust your payment, buyer, about basically 1% less than what you should be paying. But wait a minute, isn't my loan a fixed loan, 30-year fixed, rate can't change? Yes, that's right. So where's that 1% difference coming from? From the deposit we got from the seller. So that'll be dispersed on a monthly basis for the next 12 payments. And so therefore, year 2 is completed. So what happens in year 3? It just reverts to the normal payment. There's no more seller deposit on hand to subsidize the payment. That's really all it's doing. That's really all it is. Nothing more complicated than that. So here's an overview. So what is it again? First, it's a fixed rate loan with a reduction of interest rate for the first 2 years. It could be just 1 year, it could be 3 years. So interest rate is reduced 2% the first year, 1% the second year. That's why it's called a 2-1 buy down. So what is the cost? So the cost is essentially the difference between the first and second year payment during that 24-month period. It says 12 months, but it's for a 24-month period. So cost to buy down will be added to other closing costs. It'll just be on top of that. So what happens though if rates drop, which I believe they're going to in the next 11 to 16 months, something like that. What happens if a buyer has this buy down and rates drop and they want to refinance? So they get the unused seller credit for that buy down reimbursed. So here's some examples. So let's say you have a buyer that's interested in a property at
Tony,
300,000.
can you make that a little bit bigger?
Let me try.
Tony, go to enable editing on top.
Is that bigger?
There you go.
Go big or go home, right? Okay. So
Yes.
is that too big?
It's perfect.
All right. Okay, so so at 300,000, so if you have a buyer purchasing at 300,000, this example shows what if my buyer only has 5%? Okay, that's good. So they're going to borrow 285. So if we do the 2-1 buy down, here's what happens. By the way, this is based on yesterday's interest rate, assuming normal credit, assuming standard stuff. So that's how we get to 6.625 as a 30-year fixed rate. So the buy down says in year number 1, the buyer will receive a 2% reduction. Therefore, their payment is calculated at a rate of 4.625. So their principal and interest is in year number 1, 1465. By the way, this is principal and interest only. What is the total payment? Excuse me, the total payment here shows including taxes, insurance, just on average. So this means that the buyer's loan is reduced by almost $360 every month for the first year, for the first 12 payments. Then when payment number 13 rolls around, the lender adjusts the payment based on a 1% reduction. So 6.65 minus 1 is 5.65. What's the principal and interest the next 12 payments? 1640. What's the total? 2118, including taxes, insurance. Therefore, it's about 175 reduction for the second year every month for that buyer. And then in year number 3, through the remaining term, it reverts to what it's supposed to be, 2302. So what would it cost the seller, guys, to set this up to incent, to entice a good buyer? It would cost $65.26, which is essentially the sum of this number times 12 plus this number times 12. That's really all it is. It's just some simple mathematics. Now, remember how I said that CNBC was had an article about the average price reduction now is like 3.11. So I did the math, and in here, if you these numbers shake out to 2.18% reduction in the price, less than the average, national average, to incent a buyer. So let's look at example 2. Example 2 shows a home at 500,000. Well, what if my buyer only has 5% down? Okay, that's good, 475. So same thing. So the loan is fixed at 6.625. The first year, remember, the lender is going to calculate, not change the rate. It's very important distinction. They're going to calculate a 2% reduction. So they're going to charge the buyer as if the rate were 4.625. In other words, principal and interest 2442. So this is about a $600 reduction for 12 months for your buyer. And year number 2, they're going to calculate and adjust the payment by a 1% reduction. So that equals $292 every month for the next year. Savings to the buyer. What would it cost your seller if you have a seller listing at 500, 10,877? How much is that off the gross? 2.18%. Still below the national average of price reduction. And in example number 3, what if my price is 800,000? Can my buyer still qualify with 5% down? Sure. So there's 760, assuming they have the credit and income. So this rate's a little higher. Why? Because now we get into something that we cross the border of conforming limits into high balance. So therefore, but the same concept applies. The bank is going to calculate and adjust the payment as if the loan were reduced 2%. That's a 976 monthly savings for every month for the first year for your buyer. Year number 2 rolls around, the lender will calculate and adjust the payment as if the rate were 5.99. That's a 476 savings every month for the next year to your buyer. What's the total that it would cost my seller to set that up for a good buyer? 17,706. In other words, 2.21% of the gross at 800, which is still below the national average. So some things to understand. So buyers can really benefit as well, because essentially what's going on is saying, hey, look, what if we could get the seller to subsidize your payment for the first 2 years and kind of bridge you to the period when maybe rates will get lower. Statistically, chances are very good they're going to get lower, and you're not going to lose any of that seller deposit if rates get lower before the period that you've exhausted the buy down. So 2 years of flexible ownership. Buyers have extra cash for home improvements because there's a lot of money they're saving every month. Buyers can also save for other expenses, or they can focus on paying off some debt. How many times have we heard that? Oh, I want to get my debt paid off. Oh, I'd like to get this, out of the way first. Oh, here's a way you can have both.
Hey, Tony, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
So on your scenario, or any one of those scenarios, just take the last one, for example, the buy down was $17,000 for the 2-1 buy down. But let's say our seller's like, I'm not putting $17,000 towards that seller, and they're willing to do, like, say, 10,000. I know it's a 2-1 buy down, but could the buyer or the seller technically do a percentage of this and not do a full percent or a full 2%?
So great question, Chris. My response to that, my advice on a situation like that, which we've come across, is we could say, hey, look, Mr. Buyer, one option is with that 10K, why don't we set up a 1-year buy down? And then if there's excess funds left over, why don't we apply some of that to title, escrow, and some of these other costs? So you get a fantastically reduced reduction the first year, get you eased into the housing expenses, and also reduce some of your closing costs with the leftover money, assuming there is any. But that's the way I would handle it, Chris, because one rule, and we didn't get too far into the weeds into this, but one rule with these buy downs is that it has to be one source of funding. So generally the seller, so it can't be like, hey, we'll all chip in, or the agents chip in. That's not going to be generally permitted by lenders at the moment. So another thing to understand is, as I said in the beginning, so these products are not new. They just get shelved and then they're dusted off when the markets change. And so lenders are going, okay, so how do we do that again? And what are we doing this time around? So things might be a little different. So for now, they're only accepting one funding source. And I suspect that could change in the future, but for now, that's what it is.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions?
Hey, Tony, I got a quick question. So as an example, let's say some strange market force causes interest rates to dramatically drop, which, I don't foresee that happening, but let's say that it did. Where is the money put in by the seller? Where is that? Is that held in some type of special impound account or escrow account? And what would be the outcome of a refi, say 9 months, 12 months down the road with whatever balance is in there?
Excellent question. So All right, great question. So let's say in this example, guys, you sold an 800 piece of property and the seller deposited, almost $18,000 for the benefit of the buyer. And 9 months later, all hell breaks loose, rates go down to 4%, and this seller goes, hey, let's ditch this 6.99 rate, the owner, excuse me, what happens? So I think Raymond asked a question. The first part of the question is, where's the money held? I can't say exactly, but what I suspect, this is my best educated hypothesis, my conjecture, is that the bank has a, I don't know that it's an escrow account, but it's probably I don't know, an account of some sort attached to that loan number, because that loan number, guys, remember that mortgages get bought and sold. So if servicing changes or the note's sold, that account just follows it. So that's the first answer I would give, is that the seller designates a specific account for that, because it's being dispersed. It's not just a flat reduction on the total balance right away. Secondly, if a buyer, an owner, excuse me, if an owner refinances, 14 months in, 9 months in, 21 months in, whatever wasn't dispersed, one of two things will happen. They'll get a check back when the loan is paid off at the end of their refinance. The lender holding the account will just pay it back to them, or some lenders are going to just include it in the payoff. So when escrow requests what's called the official payoff demand, when completing a refinance, it'll just be a credit of, okay, you owe us this, here's a prorated interest, this, that, minus unused buy down balance. That's one of those is what'll happen.
Cool, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question, Tony.
Yes.
So, this is a program you talked about getting dusted off. We have thousands and thousands of lenders. Is this program, in your opinion, being kind of brought back in most lending institutions or brokerages? Do you think that if these agents go to their lenders, they'll know about this product?
Depends on how old their lenders are. I'm older than I look. So,
Okay.
it depends how many markets their lenders have seen. So I use this product a lot in the I remember in 2009, 10, 11, I was working with a builder, and this was all the rage because the builders were focusing on attracting buyers and keeping their buyers. So what happened was that a lot of sellers, like in that video, were saying, well, no, we kind of want to wait. And, well, rates are high, the payments, oh gosh, the payments. But, guys, in the end, one thing I would want to leave you with is that, I've counseled a few buyers, they ask my opinion, or we talk about pre-approval or the market, or what do you think, Tony? And I say, look, I understand, it's a little scary. The future is uncertain. And I echo what Chris said. He's absolutely correct. No one can predict the future exactly. We can't guarantee what's going to happen, but there's some fundamental truths I think we can hold to. And what's that? Well, one is that the price you pay for real estate, the price you paid is permanent. Once you execute the contract and close, you can't go back and change that price. The loan rate you secure is not permanent. So those that are focused on, oh my gosh, the rate, yes, I understand. It sucks to make a payment now at, in the 6s and potentially 7 where they were in the 3s. But what if we could get a motivated seller to subsidize your payment for 2 years to ease you into the housing expenses and, Lord willing, a lower rate, as invariably rates will drop. We don't know when, but they will. So remember that don't you want to secure the best price possible? Because once you close, you can't change that. Once you close on a loan, can you change that rate? Sure. As long as you take care of your credit, as long as you keep working and be who you are, you'll get the best rate. And my lender, Tony Campuzano, he's awesome. He'll get you the best rate ever. That's a great script, by the way, if anybody was taking notes.
Yes, if you're looking for the perfect script, there it is.
My eyes are still rolling here. In all honesty, though, I've worked with Tony for the last 8 years, and we've closed over 150 some odd transactions together. So in that respect, yes, he is very good at what he does. And in fact, that's the only thing he knows how to do. Don't ask him to hang pictures at all, because that'll take him hours. As far as loans, though, he's
thumbs.
phenomenal.
I ended up with black thumbs. But yeah, guys, I think it's, look, like Tanya always says, and I agree. I think Tanya's phenomenal at this, is that it's really just about your enthusiasm. It's about your conviction. But in this case, as I said, that's all it is. I mean, I had to like figure out more slides to add to this presentation. Tanya's going to think I like, there's not much to say. It's just a feature. It's just simple mathematics. It's 5th grade math. It's not really that big of a deal, but some important things to know though. Conventional FHA, VA, it's all possible, 1 to 4 units. Second home is possible, only conventional. There's no second home with FHA or VA. No investment properties, doesn't work for that. But you know, I think getting your buyer excited about the fact that, look, you have the seller at your mercy right now. Don't do what the proclivity, what the instinct of most buyers is to do, what? Retreat right now.
Yes, yes.
It's to retreat. So I tell buyers, look, do you believe in this saying? Do you agree with this saying that if you do what others don't, you'll get what others won't? But yeah, I agree with that. Well, guess what? You have the seller at your mercy. So if you go do what other buyers aren't doing, which is get out there and actually make offers, maybe because the sellers have to compete for the buyers right now, maybe you'll get a great price. And what did we agree, Mr. Buyer, is a truth about price? Once executed, can't change it, right? So we want the lowest price possible. And is that now, or when rates drop and all the buyers come back into the market, then you're having to compete with them and bid more? And
exactly. And Tony, do you mind stopping the share really quick? And by the way, I am really enjoying your simple presentation, because sometimes you're like up here, which everybody loves. So I like where you can break it down. You know what I'm thinking about this for you guys as agents is being on this call means now you get to go educate not only your buyers, but when you go to a listing agent and you want that listing, chances are the listing agents aren't going to know about this product. Okay. But you get to go back and say, have you considered, or do you know about the 2-1 buy down? And I'd love to chat with you about that. And Tony, you and I talked about possibly being able to record that section, this section that you did. Is it recordable?
yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to record this, you guys. I'm already recording it, but I'm actually going to chop it up, and I'm only going to I'll have the whole recording for training purposes. I'm going to chop it up and only have Tony's section. Okay. And I'm going to put it on our YouTube channel. And I want you guys to just tap into your resources. Okay. The other thing is there's other types of creative financing out there. Tony, if somebody needed to go a little bit more creative and they couldn't get qualified with you because of some of the reasons that you talked about last time, right? Maybe they're a landscaper and they're not claiming all of their income, and maybe there's a bunch of other reasons. Do you have hard money lending or resources to refer them over to hard money lending? And
yes, we do.
What, real quickly, while we have some time, what hard money lending is and the benefits to it? Sure.
Hard money lending, everyone, in a simple way to explain it, is basically a private lender. Sometimes it's a person, an individual, who decides, hey, I have a certain amount of capital and I want to invest that into real estate and financing. Sometimes it could be a group of people or whatever, some, I don't know, like an investment club or something like that. But oftentimes it's a person, an individual. At least that's the way it works. I'm speaking mostly how I see it in California. Other states may have other laws and rules about that or whatever, but in California, oftentimes it can be an individual. Now, that's the first thing to know about it. Second thing to know about it is often hard money lending is not going to be okay with owner occupied purchases.
Yep.
That's kind of a bummer. And the reason is the legal constraints, the legal strictures in place for that lender can be very owner centric and not very flexible for the lender. So that's something very important to understand, that if someone says, hey, I really want to buy a house, I want to move into, but I have a 500 credit score, but I have a good chunk of money down and I don't report my income. It's possible. It's possible that a hard money lender would do that, but it might take some searching. There's something called business use. So I worked with a situation where it was a landscaper. It's not that Tanya and I are picking on landscapers, but it was a landscaper. And so the lender wanted to document something called official business use. Like, okay, well, can we say that, yes, you're going to live there, but one of the purposes of occupying this particular residence is that you are doing something involving your business. And so as a matter of fact, he needed space to have some of his potted plants and some of his trailers and all that kind of stuff he was doing for his business. So, in a situation like that, it worked out. But again, we're kind of threading a needle a little bit. What is the benefit? Tanya asked. The benefit is that there's very little underwriting. So the credit scores, a lot of times the credit history, income documentation, not really required, and credit scores and credit history not emphasized too much, depending on the lender, depending on the specific product. But I guess in the simple way to say it, I think ease is one of the benefits. A lot of times the minimum down payments could be 25%. I've seen a few be willing to go to 20, but 25 to 30 seems to be more common these days, especially when values tend to soften, as is what's going on now. But the other last feature here to understand about hard money is it can be on the expensive side. So interest rates are usually double digits in these cases. I've seen some, go 9. But that's with like prepayment penalties for 3 years, and the cost of the loan itself, little on the expensive side as well, could be easily like 2 to 3 points, not including title, escrow, and all the other expenses. And so why is that? Well, think of it this way: the easier it is to get a loan, the less documentation that's required, the more risk involved. Therefore, the investor or bank or individual funding this loan is trying to receive compensation in accordance with the risk that they're taking. So that's really just the way it is. And in closing, the way I explain it to buyers is, look, in the United States, anybody can get a loan, anybody can get financed. So it's like a spectrum, a teeter-totter. The harder it is to get the loan, the lower the cost. That means the criteria is tougher, more difficult, more strict, more tedious, but in return for that, you get lower rates, lower fees. On the other side of the spectrum is hard money, which is easy to get the loan, very expensive.
Yeah.
And then in the middle is non-QM products, the bank statement products, that kind of stuff. But on the least expensive side of the spectrum is always going to be conventional FHA, VA, USDA.
So essentially, you guys go to Tony, right? If you're in California or Texas, and in Arizona, and if you can't get approved, then he'll refer you out, right? So
Absolutely.
What you guys want to do is use your trusted resources, and make sure that you're developing relationships with your lenders, and the handoff is not just like, hey, I'm sending you a buyer, they're going to buy from you. Let me know how that works out, right? You guys got to get as much information as possible. So in closing, Tony, thank you so much.
Tanya, let me just finish one little thing. I'll finish it really quickly on it, but I wanted to touch on something that Tony said and Tanya said. By the way, folks, this isn't just for your buyers. This is a great tool for your sellers. Rather than taking a ginormous price drop, and trust me, I've taken it. I took $100,000 price drop, and I'm about to recommend another $200,000 price drop. So I know it's painful. It's really painful. So rather than having them take that ginormous price drop, This is a great solution where they're spending a fraction, a fraction of what it will cost to take that price drop. So guys, this is a phenomenal tool for your sellers too. So please use it. And if you guys have Facebook, Instagram, whatever, search my name, connect with me. I'm happy to help you guys. And I know Tanya is the same. But yeah, reach out to us if you guys need any help.
Yeah, you guys, we got to get creative when getting things under contract. And just like Mary said, you don't have to go to the price drop right away. It's like, what other solutions do we have? A lot of times people are payment conscious. Okay. They're not even necessarily caring about the price. They're caring about what's my payment going to be. So thank you so much. It seems like having Tony on and talking about mortgages and rates has been really popular. So the fact that you guys are showing up is telling me you guys want to hear this information. Was this valuable? Can I get a thumbs up? Was it valuable for you guys? Okay, fantastic. All right.
Ask a quick question.
Yes.
So sorry. Because I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around this. So is there a buy down that for like the life of the loan? Like I was trying to figure out what she just said about, as a seller using it as like a strategy or whatever. So like instead of dropping the home for like 200 grand, could the seller offer to help buy down the discount points for the buyer for like the life of the loan, or is it just 2 years, 3 years, or whatever?
So that's a great question. Yes. So a seller concession, let's just say it's $10,000, could be used to permanently buy down the interest rate. Now, the problem with that is that the buy down on a permanent scale is market driven. So here's a loose rule of thumb, is that if somebody said, hey, Tony, the seller is willing to pay 1 point to buy down my interest rate. Well, 1 point, by the way, is equivalent to 1% of the amount borrowed. So somebody borrowing 500,000, that's 5 grand. Now, in exchange for that 5 grand, how much does my rate go down? In a normal market situation, it could be a quarter, 0.25. So instead of 6.75, maybe now I'm at 6.5. In a great market situation, could be 3/8. Maybe I'm down to 6.125. In a choppy market, maybe it's only 1/8. So now I'm down to 6.625. So it's not a derivative. It's not an exact reduction. So, but the answer to your question is yes, a buyer could absolutely secure a permanent buy down. The problem is that the permanent buy down is much more expensive. The temporary buy down is going to give them a lot more savings compressed in the first 2 years, first 3 years, first year. And I think really kind of the sizzle in linking back to the presentation Mary showed is that, I could get very technical, guys, about the stochastic oscillators and crossover convergence lines and bond pricing, but this happened in 2020. This occurrence in the bond market happened in 2020. What happened after that? Rates dropped a lot. We're now at the beginning of that right now. As I was watching it this morning, watching a video on it this morning. So statistically speaking, I think rates probably are going to get down to 4%, maybe middle end of next year. So of course we can never guarantee that. We have to be careful. We have to give all the disclaimers, but the reality is that rates are going to change. And so I think the sizzle here for the buyer and the seller is, for the seller is, hey, look, you could attract a good eligible, a capable buyer, because right now to qualify at almost 7%, they are a good buyer. So you could attract a good buyer, and for the buyer, hey, look, you could get subsidized for the first 2 years, and let's bridge you to when invariably rates drop. And if they don't drop, well, hey, you got a huge $17,000 or $10,000, whatever it was, concession. Good for you. So I hope that answers the question, Jason, but the answer is yes. A seller could permanently buy down the rate for a buyer. It just gets expensive and they just don't get the same bang for their buck. And then there's limits. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, USDA, whatever, jumbo, they all impose limits on, well, exactly how much can the seller contribute to any kind of concession for the buyer.
Okay, thank you.
You got it, sir. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, guys. I will put this recording in the Thrive Facebook page. Reach out if you have any questions, and reach out if you have buyers that you want to get on this program, or sellers that want to learn more about this program. Okay, guys.
And my number is right there, guys.
Oh yeah, there is Mary's number. And then Chris put lenders that are in Florida as well. And then please hop on Thursday on the goal setting class. Ashley worked for EXP Growth and works directly for Chris Heller, and she's gonna talk to you about how to grow your business. Okay. All right, you guys, thank you so much. And thank you, Tony. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Chris. And thank you guys for showing up. Talk to you soon. Okay, bye.
See you later. Bye.